This episode is sponsored by Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races in West Virginia. May's featured entertainment includes Jamie Lissow on the 18th and Randy Houser on the 31st. Also enjoy special race day and Mother's Day buffets in the Skyline Terrace. Details and reservations at HollywoodCasinoCharlestown.com. Must be 21 to enter the casino floor and attend a show. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Damon Gupton has acted in Whiplash, La La Land, Bates Motel, Criminal Minds, Black Lightning, and the Big Door Prize. But did you know he's also a respected conductor? Tomorrow he'll guest conduct the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra for Blockbuster Film Classics at Strathmore in North Bethesda, Maryland, followed by a pair of shows this weekend in Baltimore.
I'm Damon Gupton, and I happen to be a guest conductor for a wonderful film classic Hollywood celebration this weekend at Strathmore and the Meyerhoff.
Yeah. So it's called the BSO Presents Blockbuster Film Classics. It's going to be Thursday at Strathmore. And then did you say there's a second show at a different place?
Oh, we got two at Meyerhoff this weekend. So one on Strathmore Thursday night and then two at Meyerhoff. It is the home of the great Baltimore Symphony. So hopefully
Gotcha.
some of your folks know exactly where that is.
Well, that's awesome. Well, I wanted to have you on here because I'm a huge movie buff and I love all these scores, man. It's great. And we can go into some of the film titles and the actual composers and stuff in a minute, but just overview it for me at first. Like, how does this work? Like, are there clips playing on a screen or is it more just straight orchestra, amazing wall of epic sound?
This right. This is Wall of Epic Sound. Unfortunately, we couldn't do any of the clips for this concert, but we're going to do the incredible lush orchestrations of a lot of the old film classics. I think will mostly be spread on the first half, and then the second half we'll kind of do some of the later things. So we've got old Hollywood to begin. And then second half, we bring out some newer things and maybe a surprise here or two. And I say newer, but these are already like, 30 years old, 30, 40 years old. But
My wife and I always joke. I call it relatively recent.
that's right. That's right. Right.
He's like, that came out in the 80s and 90s. That's old now. And I'm like, relative to the overall, 100+ year arc of movie history. Relatively recent. All right, cool.
Yeah.
And one more overview before we get into the deep dive on the actual scores. We'll just talk about why is it, if folks have never done something like this before, why is it so just a unique, one of a kind experience to see an orchestra play these as opposed to, maybe just watching the movie, why is this like you got to get out and hear an orchestra do them?
That's such a great question. I think it's really, really wonderful to be able to come here and orchestra play film scores live because quite often in the film mixes, the orchestra is turned down. So there's a lot of score that you don't even hear in the film. Like even with some of our classic films, I'm a big John Williams fan. And, you can watch Empire Strikes Back, but then you realize, oh my goodness, when you actually cut the film out and just listen to the music, there's all this music that you never get to hear. So I think when you get to sit in a wonderful symphony hall with a wonderful orchestra, you really get to experience the music and the story in a whole new way. So yeah,
absolutely. Well, you mentioned John Williams, so let's start there. I'll throw out some of the film titles that you're doing, and we'll work. And this won't necessarily be the order. You got to come to the to the show to see what order these are in, folks. But we'll skip around. So you mentioned John Williams, so of course you're playing E.T. the Extraterrestrial. That theme, especially the flying theme as the bike goes over the moon, man, it is. I mean, talk about why it's one of the most magical, childlike wonder scores of all time. But yeah, just talk about why you think it works and maybe some of the instrumentation that is featured in it.
Brilliant. We have full orchestra there. We have strings, violins, violas, cellos, full brass, trumpets, trombones, horns, full winds, clarinets, flutes, oboes, bassoons, percussion in the back, tuba, of course, laying it down with the rest of the low brass. that music is so magical and spectacular, and I've read, even though sometimes John Williams says that he is, he can't necessarily pick one of his favorite scores because it's like picking between your children, you know. But I've heard him say on record that he's really, really proud of E.T. And boy, should he be. I think it's one of the great examples of when a film master like Spielberg has to recut the end of a film to fit the music. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. There's a great story about, John Williams had written all this music and Spielberg heard it and said, you know what, I'm going to recut some of the ending to match the music. That's how good the music was. And of course, that lasting image of Elliot, looking up into the sky with French horns screaming the
I'm
last.
crying.
Oh man, it gets me every time. And to conduct it is one of my favorite pieces to conduct. And we're doing
Yeah.
what's called E.T. Adventures on Earth, which is a 10-minute representation. So basically, from when the bikes take off,
Mm.
and they escape the police all the way through the end of the film. That's exactly kind of what we're playing there, that whole section. So, yeah.
I'll be right here. I'm crying every time. And thanks for mentioning the recutting. Yeah, because usually, the composer scores to the finished final cut. But in this case, Spielberg trusted him so much that he was like, "Give me the music first, and I'll edit the movie."
Exactly.
Another John Williams you'll be playing is, of course, Jurassic Park. About
Yeah.
11 years, it came out 11 years after E.T.
Right.
Man, talk about how, I mean, to me, in my mind, I mean, you're a composer, or a conductor, so you know it probably a little different. To me, it's like two main themes. You get the big rousing with the gates opening, welcome to Jurassic Park, the dun,
Mhm.
dun, 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 and then there's the slower, like, dun, 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 dun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Tell me what
yeah.
instruments are being used in those.
Well, it depends. I think when you get to yada-dee, yada-dee, da-da-dum, that varies. Sometimes we have a light flute playing that. Sometimes we have a celeste playing that. Sometimes we have low strings. The selection we're playing from Jurassic Park combines both of those themes that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
So we have the full grandeur and statement of trumpets, trombones, horns, percussion with the big theme, even glockenspiel on the entrance into the park. And then when we get a little more reflective, we have some quieter moments and reflections in the violin, violas, cellos.
Little piano
It,
too. Dun, 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 dun.
yeah, but I think the soundtrack spoiled us because at the very end of the film he uses the piano when he's
Yeah.
looking out the plane. So we aren't playing that particular passage, but there is a piano in it
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, let's
Mhm.
throw it back to some more classic themes because Maurice Jarre doing
Oh
David
yeah.
Lean's
Oh wow.
Lawrence of Arabia. I'm telling you, man, I can close my eyes and just hear ban, dun, dun, da, 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 da. Man, it is talk about you just get sort of swept. It's like intoxicating. You feel like you're trekking across the desert with the sun.
Oh
But yeah, just talk
yeah.
about why you think that. I mean, that's one of the great epic scores of all time, right?
It surely is. It's certainly ranked very high on like the AFI's list. I know as well
Yeah.
it should be. His use of sweep in the orchestra, and by that I mean, when we look at the film, and I just recently rewatched it, um, like a remastered version of it. When you think about sweep of film, you have to try to match that in orchestra, and quite often I think orchestrators try to do that with strings, harps. Um, as a matter of fact, he's doubled some percussion in this film to kind of deal with the Anthony Quinn characters and the Omar Sharif character and stuff. So he's covered so many bases. And originally in this film, they were speaking about having two separate composers, one for the British side of the world, maybe being Malcolm Arnold or Benjamin Britten, and then another for the Russian eastern side of the world. So they were thinking about getting Khachaturian or some other Russian master. That's how epic he wanted this tune, and or this score, I should say. And Maurice Jarre obviously wasn't the first choice for this, and he was relatively unknown at the time. So for him to come
Hmm.
in and take, what was it, 6 weeks or whatever he did, and compose 2 hours of music, uh, or 2 weeks, it's something weird. I forget what it is. I gotta
Wow.
remember that. But for him to come in and create this massive orchestra palette to match all of the things you see on film and interweave all of these little themes. Dum, da-da-dum, every time
Yep.
when we're dealing with the soldiers, and it's just fantastic. It's an epic score, and boy, are we fortunate that he got to do that instead
Yeah.
of someone else. It would have been great, I'm sure. So, but it's funny how that works, right? Like all of a sudden it's like, oh, here, Mr. Williams, would you like to do Star Wars? He's like, sure. It could have been somebody else. It could have been,
Right.
Elmer Bernstein, or it could
Right.
have been, James Horner. And these are
Right.
all great composers. But, oh, we're actually doing some Elmer B. We're doing Magnificent Seven too. So that's another fun one.
Dun-dun, dun-dun-dun-dun. I mean, these guys create epic stuff, but
Don't
yeah, shout out Elmer B. But it's a good point. Without Maurice Jarre getting tapped to do Lawrence of Arabia, we would never get his, Dr. Zhivago.
That's correct.
All right. Well, I know you got to run. So we like time for maybe one more classic, because Vertigo, Bernard Herrmann.
Vertigo, oh my
One of the
goodness.
arguably the GOAT, well, John Williams, but let's say of the classic era.
Well,
Everyone has their own favorite Hitchcock movies, and there's a million reasons we could argue them. But Vertigo, I don't know why I love this movie so. I find more and more symbolic Hitchcockian imagery every time. But we're gonna talk the music. That score is hypnotic. It is especially talk about that moment where it swells, when what is it, Judy transforms back to Madeline when he's looking in the green light at the door, and it builds, and then the scene d'amore, the that one. Describe that moment musically if you can.
Oh, it's a great build, and obviously and I love Herman, and he tapped Richard Wagner's Tristan and Isolde in this particular section intensely. And what that means is that there's all this push and pull in the music, meaning crescendo to diminuendo. This whole things are falling. They're always crescendoing and growing and spinning.
And kind of circle spinning, yeah. It's like a hypnotic spin. The dun, 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 dun,
well,
dun, like
exactly that. And the score starts that way. At least the sweet part of it. We won't be playing that part, but it starts with these twirls and colors and spinning and harmonies that are unsettling.
Just like the spinning kiss. And the spinning hairdo bun and everything, baby. It's a masterpiece. But you're doing the scene d'amore, right? You have to.
Yes. The scene d'amore is just gorgeous, and it's stunning, and it's just it's stunning. It's a beautiful piece of music that holds up as a not just on a pops concert for films, but on a standard classical concert. It's gorgeous. I think one of the greatest pieces of film music we've ever had. It's just a thrill to conduct. So, I've never done it before, so I'm excited to do it for the first time.
Well, I really appreciate you joining us. If you can't tell, you and I could probably go all day on these things. You got to leave some for the imagination of people to come out.
Thinking about, because we didn't even get to talk about Ennio Morricone, man. We didn't.
What do you do? Cinema Paradiso, or which one of his?
Absolutely. Cinema Paradiso. Sure, we're gonna do
hum it for a bit. That one, I love Cinema Paradiso. I've used that I put that under radio pieces all the time. So good.
Oh my goodness, gorgeous, with the violin solo. The wonderful soloist William Chiquito. We hope everybody comes out. We hope you come out. After all this talking out, you better come to the concert.
Right? I know we can't just talk about it. Got to hear it too. Yeah, but West Side Story. There's so much. You guys got to come out and see it. Again, it is the BSO Blockbuster Film Classics, Thursday, May 9th at Strathmore, and then Saturday and Sunday in Baltimore. What's the venue again?
Meyer
Hall in Baltimore, Saturday. Thanks for doing this. We'll get the word out.
I appreciate that. You take good care.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time.